Hello everybody and welcome back to a new week, Thanksgiving week at The Damage Report. I'm John DeRollo. You know what I'm thankful for? Brooke.
Oh, that is so,
I'm thankful that you're here.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
It caught me off guard. I don't know what to do.
Well, don't do anything. I would be thankful for that. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm glad to have you here. We've got today, and we're gonna have a regular show tomorrow as well. Wednesday is gonna be Brett Ehrlich and Francesca Fiorentini are gonna be filling in, because then it's Thanksgiving, and also I'm kind of getting married, so I've got a lot to prep for. So I'm not gonna be here on Wednesday. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not gonna be thinking about you while I'm gone.
This is
but
so
anyway, no, I'm
exciting.
kidding. It is gonna be exciting, but it's a lot for 1 week. And so like we've got some plans.
Getting married during the holidays is a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's overwhelming.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna do it Christmas, but like there's this one guy that like tries to make that day all about himself. But anyway, yeah, I'm talking about Jesus.
Jesus or Santa Claus?
Santa's earned it. He works hard. Jesus is just a baby. He just lays there.
Stop.
How does he deserve a whole day?
No.
Around the whole world.
Where is Laura Ingraham when you need her to come and protect my religion? Anyway,
but we do have big plans for Thursday and Friday. We won't be here. We won't have live shows, but there will be shows. We're gonna be taking a look back at the year, some of the standout interviews that we've done, and also some important segments that I think are very timely for right now. So there's a good chance you've missed them, so definitely tune in for those. We've got lots planned for today's show as well, but I'm just gonna jump right into it with a little update on the impeachment saga. When it comes to impeachment, Donald Trump has apparently found some good news for himself, and he's been tweeting it out over the past couple of days. He had this to say: support for impeachment is dropping like a rock, down into the 20s in some polls. Dems should now get down to work and finally approve USMCA and much more. And before that, he said, Democrats going back to their districts for Thanksgiving are getting absolutely hammered by their constituents over the phony impeachment scam. Republicans will have a great 2020 election. So that is very good news for Donald Trump. There's just one problem with it. He's just making it up.
Right.
Support is down to the 20s. Now, obviously, he doesn't link to any polls, but like serious people. So Philip Bump, the Washington Post, tried to track down any poll that he could even misinterpret into thinking support was in the 20s. And nothing, not a zilch. There's nothing. Here's your average support for impeachment. Relatively steady. It's not blowout numbers or anything, but it ain't 20. I mean, maybe if he just meant Republicans, maybe he is so insular and partisan that he thinks that that's the only number that matters, but nobody else thinks that. And even there, you can't find a result where the Republicans say that exact number. He's just making it up, and like we're supposed to pretend that the president wouldn't do that. Just say, you know what would be good for me? If the numbers were in the 20s, I'm gonna type it. I'm just gonna say that. And maybe this explains a lot of the other activity out of him, where he can say that like the New York Times just makes up stories. He honestly thinks, yeah, people like me, we just say what we want to be true.
Yeah, he could just not tweet. That's the thing, nobody's asking for this. Nobody needs this, this is not part of his job. He doesn't have to do this.
Well, but maybe it is. Maybe wrangling his base and reassuring them that.
Well, let him tell it they're good. They don't need reassuring. 95%.
Maybe, yeah, 90. So there's the next thing. So this is what's amazing. So Phil Bum goes through this. So this is on impeachment, but it's not like him making up the poll results is new. He said he has this to say: 95% approval rating in the Republican Party, a record.
Sir.
Thank you. And again, that's not in a poll anywhere. Like he didn't get, and look, it's really, he's got lots of support in the Republican Party.
Why did he
So why lie when you could just tell the truth and it would be impressive?
Also, if you're gonna lie and it just be an extravagant lie, why didn't he just say 100%?
Well, that's the thing. So Phil Bump points out, like, dude, you can't really go up much from there. Like, are you gonna say 101, 107%? And here's the thing, in February, it was 93%. In mid-July, he started saying it was 94%. That lasted until late September when the impeachment inquiry began. Then suddenly it's at 95%, where it stayed, but it's just made up. And again, I always say this, I know that very few of you watching this are Trump fans or even sort of interested in Trump, but if you are, it needs to bother you that he would care so little about you that he'd just make up a number and tell you that it's true. Like if, I like Bernie Sanders. I support Bernie Sanders. I've endorsed Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders just spat in my face on a daily basis, making up numbers over and over and over again, like at a certain point, maybe I like the guy's policies, but I have enough self-respect that I'm not gonna follow someone who does not care at all about me.
Well, here's the thing. I do believe that you have enough self-respect to not follow someone who doesn't care about you, right? So taking that extreme away, I do think hardcore politician supporters have a hard time calling out their faves, period.
Okay.
It is easy to make excuses, and we see it, and it's more normalized when it's normal people. And so that's a lot of, I think, the frustration in this primary for a lot of people. It's harder to understand when it's just blatant crazy, but it is happening everywhere. We all have to get better at that. It's
at supporting and not worshiping?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes, because when you hold your fave to a higher standard, that's better for you. It is, you know what I mean? That's better for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
what can you do with this?
Probably nothing. I'm not, look, I'm not, it's not like, you know what, like we're gonna close the show and be like, you know what, I think I got through to Trump. No, but I hope to get through to a regular person. And I'm very glad, by the way, that you have expanded the scope, because look, he's, I think, out and out, far away, the worst, most casual liar that we've ever had in politics.
Absolutely.
But the issue of Americans investing all of themselves in anything, whether it's a soda brand, a sports team, or a politician, it's not healthy, and it leads to motivated reasoning where you interpret everything that comes in based on your attachment to these people. I mean, or
your disattachment, like your dislike too.
Your hatred, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, and dislike can't last. Not in 2019 in politics. You can't dislike a politician. As soon as you move the needle over to a little bit negative, they are Lucifer, who is Satan.
Yeah.
That's just as dangerous.
It's bad, yeah. Because you have to be able to, you have to be able to see good things in people who may not be your choice, and you have to be able to call your choice out on missteps. This over here, I don't know. Honestly, I can't even. This is on the bottom of my list that he lies to you about polls. This is at the bottom of my list of things you should care about.
But that's kind of why I care.
Yeah?
It's the least important thing, and thus the weirdest that you would lie about it, I think.
I agree.
It's not an important policy or something.
Like it says something bigger.
Yeah, it's like lying about like the color of a tie you wore or something. It's like, what are you talking? Lie about important things at least. Do what politicians do. Lie about crucial things. Don't lie about casual things, you weirdo. Anyway, more important substantively on this, we turn now to Devin Nunes, actually, who is finding himself becoming a bigger part of this story as time goes on.
Oh my
Devin Nunes, pictured on my right.
Oh my goodness.
He's now finding himself in the sights of some concern over his involvement in this impeachment inquiry. There's an allegation that Representative Devin Nunes met with Shokin. So he's the ousted investigator from Ukraine who helped to sort of start this whole thing. Apparently he was trying to obtain information about former Vice President Joe Biden and his son. This is Lev Parnas' attorney has clued us all into this. Parnas is one of two Soviet-born associates for Rudy Giuliani who were indicted on charges that they broke campaign finance law. So Parnas' attorney, Joseph Brody, told the Washington Post that Shokin informed Parnas that he had met with Nunes in Vienna back in December of last year. So Lev Parnas, obviously one of those two close Rudy Giuliani associates. He himself is under a lot of threat of potential jail time. He has now said he's apparently cooperating. He's given audio recordings and video recordings of himself and Giuliani and Trump to House investigators. He says he wants to testify. All of that is good because he does have insider information. He also is probably a massive liar. So take everything he says with a grain of salt. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, listen, Giuliani said he has an insurance plan. Devin Nunes, do you?
Did you bury it in the cow field? Do you have something you can dig up?
It's getting spicy.
Yeah, it is. It is. And look,
what was it? Fraud alert?
Fraud guarantee.
Fraud guarantee. Thank you.
You know who I trust? The guy who called his company Fraud Guarantee. That's a guarantee you can take to the bank. The bank doesn't even exist, it turns out. But anyway, so look, Devin Nunes, obviously this is bad news.
Yeah.
Also, apparently, fake news, he says. So this is a Breitbart headline about this, exclusive. Devin Nunes to sue CNN Daily Beast over fake news attacks. So leave this up. For two reasons. No, let's go back to it. For two reasons. One, he is apparently actually suing the people reporting on this new information. But also importantly, Breitbart, trusted news source on Facebook, all over the place, super official. This is their news coverage of this. No, go back. Because in the bottom, you're gonna see, how do they describe this? He's suing both CNN and the Daily Beast over fake hit pieces the outlets have published. That's just their news, that's how they describe it. Fake hit pieces, not reporting that Nunes disputes or anything. That's just what they write in their articles, fake hit pieces, but they're official. You can trust them.
Filing
Mark
suit
Zuckerberg
against
says.
CNN. And the
Well, we'll
Daily
see.
Beast.
He says he is.
He says after Thanksgiving, right? What is this? What you just want to give your
we're all
lawyers?
busy, you know. So you gotta like get the cranberries and like exactly. That's true. Nobody wants to work over the Thanksgiving weekend. So that's what he said. Now he was also asked over the weekend about this. He was on Fox with Maria Bartiromo, and here is how he answered the question.
Yeah.
Were you in Vienna with Shokin?
Yeah, so look, Maria, I really want to answer all of these questions, and I promise you I absolutely will come back on the show and answer these questions. But because there is criminal activity here, we're working with the appropriate law enforcement agencies. We're going to file all this. Everyone's going to know the truth. Everybody's going to know all the facts. But I think you can understand that I can't compete by trying to debate this out with the public media when 90% of the media are totally corrupt. And because this is criminal in nature, and because it's so bad, it's so slanderous.
Are you telling me that CNN committed criminal activity?
Well, it's very likely, or they're an accessory to it.
Criminal activity though, even
because they reported on something,
right?
So they broke the law.
Criminal.
They're criminals because they reported on this.
Also, why did you agree to this interview knowing that you didn't want to answer a simple yes or no question?
Wait, are you implying he didn't answer the question? She asked him, did you go to Vienna and meet with this guy? And he said, I would love to answer that.
Said, yeah, Maria.
Yeah. So the thing is,
also,
yeah, he didn't answer. That's weird. Okay, so if they're slandering you, the reason they're slandering you is because it didn't happen. And thus, you're free to say, no, I didn't go to Vienna to meet that guy.
Also,
here, I'll show him. I didn't, here, come to me. I didn't go to Vienna to meet Shokin. See? Because it's true, and I'm saying it's a true thing. You could do that.
But okay, come back to me. No, I'm just kidding.
I would have liked that, actually.
I'm just kidding. No, but his explanation is that there's a bunch of fake news media out there. I'll come back and answer this yes or no question. But
But I can't fight the 90% who are corrupt.
By your definition, the fake news media will still exist. You're not gonna shut CNN down.
Yeah, so why not
with your
just
civil
answer?
Suit.
If they're wrong, and again, they're allowed to report on what someone in a criminal inquiry is saying. They're not committing a crime by that.
When will you ever be able to answer a yes or no question?
Probably never, because he's learned that. And you don't have to, because they're not gonna press. She could have pressed for him to be like yes or no. So look, even if it's wrong, and it could entirely be wrong, maybe he didn't meet with him.
Yeah.
They're allowed to report on it. That's not slander. But importantly, to the extent that we can say anything definitively about whether it happened, I don't have proof. Proof probably exists. I don't have proof, but I do have evidence at least. And so reports filed with the Office of the Clerk for the House of Representatives show that Nunes claimed expenses for a 4-day trip to Europe at the time in question between November 30th and December 3rd. And importantly, and maybe why he's so fired up, they apparently spent $57,000 of taxpayer money for him and 3 aides to fly to Europe on those flights. Now that is not proof that I don't even see Vienna specifically. So maybe they didn't go to Vienna. And even if they went to Vienna, maybe they didn't meet Shokin. But you can't say this is crazy slander and I just happened to be right in the neighborhood where this supposedly happened. Now this is not proof positive. We will find out, they'll investigate it. But it certainly looks like there is something to be investigated.
Well, now I want to know about this $60,000 trip.
Some nice flights, apparently. Yeah.
What?
He had one of those cool TVs that you flip out and then it's in front of you. You know, like the targeting scanner from Star Wars. I like those. But anyway, and look, if he himself has been for months working with Shokin, or trying to at least to get something for Biden, and he's just this like outside observer in the impeachment inquiry, he's defending the president's honor, that is gonna look so bad for both of them.
Oh my goodness.
But we have to wait and find out. Okay, stick around, we'll be back after this.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
So there you are seeing hundreds of Harvard students at the Harvard-Yale football game who stormed the field and for about 30 minutes held a protest to try to get Harvard to divest from fossil fuels and also from Puerto Rican debt. And apparently there was about 150 students. They were right at the 50-yard line chanting disclose, divest, and reinvest. Wow. By the time play resumed, several dozen people were issued misdemeanor summonses for disorderly conduct. So there was a little bit of legal ramifications, as will happen, but it was a very high-profile way to do that protest, certainly got people's attention.
Thank God the players weren't kneeling, though.
Oh my God, no, no.
Just kidding, both protests are fine and appropriate.
Now I'm wondering what you really think. But don't worry, both protests will be attacked by Fox News, as we'll get to in just a little bit. So we have a couple of quotes from one of the protest organizers, Caleb Schwartz, a student at Harvard, who said, "That moment when we saw people running onto the field was just really incredible. I saw organizers around me crying because it was such a beautiful moment. We know that we don't have a lot of time to act to curb the effects of climate change, and the longer it takes for our universities to acknowledge their role in the climate crisis and accept responsibility, the longer the urgent action we need to take on climate change is going to be delayed." He goes on to say, although it was disruptive and some people were not too happy we were on the field, it was really important because our universities are just not listening to our voices and our generation's call for urgent climate action.
Absolutely, what a great statement. Protests are important. That's how we get things done.
Exactly, exactly. And look, I know that in recent years, there's been concern from various sides about what sort of speech is healthy or productive on college campuses, but I do know this, over the past few years, the right wing has come out and they've been very clear. Free speech on college campuses. We don't want people to be shut down from expressing what they believe politically, which I'm sure you will see in the commentary to come. I'm just kidding, they don't like it at all. So here is on Fox News, they had a college senior from Harvard, we'll give you some details about after this, talking about how he saw the protests.
We love our football game. We love our Harvard-Yale, our historic game. It's the oldest football game in the country. And these protesters decided that their version of empty activism for this weekend was going to go sit in the middle of the field during the game, right in the middle of it, wasting everybody's time. I have to say most people were pretty nonplussed. The protest was pretty poorly planned. Most of my friends were just irked, very annoyed that they got their time taken away from them. But our biggest takeaway, for the most part, was that this was just another empty political activist thing that liberals tend to do on big days. They pick our favorite day and then they do whatever they want with it. I have to say, it's really quite annoying. I don't think the protests accomplished much.
Okay, so to all of you young activists out there, yeah, he seems like a fun guy, very cool. What I love is a college student who's already 50. But anyway, if you're going to protest to try to stop our civilization from being irreparably harmed, don't irk people, okay? Could you do that? Could you protest in a way that doesn't irk people, that doesn't annoy them? You know, you were on the 50-yard line, okay, compromise. Do it in an abandoned warehouse miles away where nobody can see you. That would irk me less. So that guy, Harvard student, it makes sense that Fox would want to talk to some people. Of course, they're going to talk to people who aren't supportive of it, but it's not just a student. It's a guy who works for Campus Reform, which is this like fake grassroots college organization that right-wing millionaires and billionaires established that nobody cares about except for Fox News. And he's come on a whole bunch of times to stand there and pretend that he's already running for the House of Representatives, because that's all this is. He doesn't care about the protest. He doesn't care about football. He doesn't have a single unique organic thought in his head. He's there to advance his own political career, and so they bring him on to complain about liberal protest. And then next week he'll be brought on to say, well, how dare they not let some right-wing thinker come on the campus to say what he thinks? And then it's back to liberals shouldn't be inconveniencing us. Why are our dollars going to this? And then it's back to, well, right-wingers should really be allowed to say whatever they want. And then it's really annoying, these empty political stunts. That's the game that they play.
It was the same like talking points that you hear from right-wing politicians. So cool, I guess, it annoyed you. Protests are inconvenient, that's the point.
Exactly.
Except for the ones that are completely silent and not disrespectful of anyone that you still have a problem with.
Exactly.
But I mean, I feel for people that have so much more anger for the protest than the actual issue at hand.
Like he cares. So do you have a better or more productive way to protest around climate change? Oh no, you just don't care about climate change. You don't believe it. Well, it doesn't matter if you believe it happens or not. You're paid by billionaires to say that you don't believe it, and you don't care what happens to the future of humanity.
Because, sir, even though you think you're 65, you're not, and you should care.
Exactly.
Because
and so to give you an idea of how it is, to give you an idea of how intellectually serious this person they brought on to talk about is, he went on to say that Harvard couldn't possibly afford to provide financial aid to students if they weren't invested in fossil fuels. It's not that he doesn't care about climate change, it's that he's thinking about the future financial aid. Would you like to know what the endowment of Harvard is right now? $40.9 billion.
Oh my God. Wow.
I think they'd make do for a couple of years if not for that. And by the way, just really fast to let you know, between March 1st and April 5th of this year, Fox ran at least 53 segments promoting supposedly outrageous stories on American college campuses. Of those 53, 40 were stories previously reported by Campus Reform. 15, they specifically cited Campus Reform or featured a Campus Reform representative to comment. So this is how the movements work on different sides. On the right wing, billionaires set up these think tanks and organizations and pretend that they have a focus, that this is a student thing. And then they just pay millions of dollars to have a couple of conservatives pretend to be genuinely like worked up over it. Fox News brings them on as if they're some sort of legitimate source for information on what college campuses are actually talking about. And then it produces this idea that there's all this right-wing activism, but it's just led by Fox News and billionaires. That's all it is, and they're very consistent. On the other side, MSNBC doesn't care what progressive organizations are doing on college campuses. Billionaires aren't paying millions and millions a year to promote them on Facebook. It's a very unlevel playing field, I'll just say that. Anyway, good job to the students for protesting both of those issues, divestment from fossil fuels and over Puerto Rican debt, incredibly important issues, and I'm very glad that students still care enough to actually do something about it.
I agree, I'm glad we're talking about it.
I agree, okay, stick around. Joining us now is the host of America Dissected, physician, public health expert, and progressive activist, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. Welcome to the Damage Report.
John, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be with you.
Glad to have you here and to break down a couple of different topics that you've been covering on your podcast. But before we get into the specifics, for people who might not be familiar with America Dissected, give us the rundown of what this podcast is about.
Yeah, we really wanted to go deep on understanding the stories beyond the headlines in health and healthcare. I'm a doctor, and I also ran for office in Michigan in 2018. And one of the things I realized is that for most folks, these big picture, but also really complex issues are a little bit hard to grasp. And so what I wanted to do is do a series sort of breaking them down and getting down to the core of the key questions. And the fact is that when we think about health in America, it comes down to two things. It comes down to good, competent government and really good science. And when those two things get together, there are really amazing things happen in our lives, whether that's vaccinations, antibiotics, or even thinking back, building basic sewage systems that prevented us from drinking water that was otherwise contaminated, telling stories around things like anti-vaxxers, things like goop, or this modern sort of quackery epidemic that we're seeing, why prescription drugs are so expensive, or why it is that we didn't deal with the crack epidemic with the same kind of empathy that we're seeing with opioids.
You just raised a bunch of points, and I want to touch on several of them. But you mentioned the anti-vaxxers, you mentioned Goop specifically. You had an episode, Quack to the Future, about grifters and scammers in this area. Look, I'm assuming that some of this is just, greed. They want the money. Some believe some things that are sort of demonstrably false. But is this getting bigger? It feels like there's a lot more of this on TV and in podcasts and things like that. Is it getting bigger? Is it having a negative impact on people's health? What's your read of it?
Unfortunately, John, yes. We've got this sort of exploding wellness industrial complex right now, and everybody's looking for the latest and greatest. And unfortunately, in the gap where science hasn't answered some of the basic questions that some of us are asking about our health, particularly if we're lucky enough to be healthy, i.e. I want clearer skin or I want to do something about that nagging pain, you've got these grifters who come in and sell you a product telling you it's going to help you. And with the advent of things like podcasts and with the kind of media that exists now, it's really easy to just say, I've got a solution for that. But it's not just folks who don't know what they're talking about. It's also people who do, people like Mehmet Oz, who's got a daytime television show built around this kind of thing.
Good morning, I have a question, Brooke here. So your episode called Pharmageddon, right? It explores how we've gotten to the point of overpaying for prescription drugs. Without giving too much away, can you tell us a little bit about what you broke down there?
Yeah, Brooke, so we took a look at the way that Gilead, a major pharmaceutical corporation, decided to price a treatment for hepatitis C called Sovaldi. That treatment was researched and developed in a government-funded lab. And now it's being sold back to those same taxpayers for $84,000 a course to cure hepatitis C. And in the course of that, what ultimately ended up happening is people were left off of that medication. It'd be like creating a medication for cancer and then waiting until people got to stage 4 to give them the treatment. And that's what we did with hepatitis C because this corporation priced it at such an exorbitant rate. And we wanted to understand exactly why that happens and why that's not just one drug, but it's why we're seeing something like insulin, which the patent for insulin was discovered in Toronto by a guy named Frederick Banting. He sold the patent for $1. And now in America, you're talking about $250 a vial, leaving so many people who need that medication off of that. And so we want to understand why the pharmaceutical corporations have corrupted our process of doing science and offering people treatments to their diseases. And really more importantly, what government needs to stand up and do about it.
Another topic definitely involves an intersection between government, science, and corporations. You have lead all over the place. And in the past few years, there's been, just recently New Jersey, there were big protests around. Obviously, Flint received finally quite a bit of attention. Has anything been done over the past few years? And do you have sort of a path you'd like to see our country walk on lead contamination if we were to get a president who actually cared at all about the situation?
It's just now coming back to the fore, realizing that we had thought we had dealt with this and we really haven't. I think Flint put it on the top of everybody's mind. And like you said, just now starting to get the kind of services that it deserves. We also saw something pop up in Newark, but those are sort of the tip of the iceberg. And as you well know, John and Brooke, the part of the iceberg that really kills you is the part that you don't see. And unfortunately, in low-income communities across this country, you've got kids who are being poisoned. If we were serious about this, we would say that our standard is 0 lead in the air or in the water or in a home, and we would invest in making sure that lead was taken out of the paint in homes and that we were taking leaded piping out of the ground. Now that's a big bet investment, but it's an investment in the brains of our kids, which really are our future.
So I want to talk to you about Medicare for all, because in terms of what's going to be done in the future in regard to our health as a country, how we deal with health insurance and all that, it's one of the biggest parts of the conversation going on right now. We have this Democratic primary where you have some candidates that are very clear. They're not interested in radically changing the situation we have right now with the ACA. We have a couple who are very supportive of Medicare for all as it's currently formulated in one or more bills. And then there's others who are sort of using some of the language, but don't seem as dedicated to a structural change the way health insurance and all of that are dealt with. As a doctor viewing this situation, you have a different perspective, I think, than a lot of people. So what do you think about this debate that's being held right now in the Democratic primary?
Well, John, we've got to be very clear about one thing. Medicare for all means single payer healthcare. And as we talk about in the podcast, our last 2 episodes really focus on the brokenness of the healthcare system and what we can do to fix it. As we talk about, there's something about Medicare for all that gets to the basic economics of the way that healthcare is delivered. And right now, we allow these corporations, whether they be the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the hospital industry, to make a lot of money off of sick people, off of our bodies when they get sick. Medicare for All realizes that allowing healthcare to be a business fundamentally introduces a level of insecurity and a level of cost that we don't need to deal with as a country, and we need to get over.
Yeah.
And so Medicare for All fundamentally differs. We need to step up and realize that, but it's going to take political courage, because for far too long we've allowed these corporations to not just profiteer off of our bodies, but to corrupt our political system by being able to move their money to lobby and to campaign. And that's exactly what they've done. In fact, people don't realize this, but over the past 21 years, the pharmaceutical industry has been the biggest lobbying sector, lobbying to the tune of $4.4 billion. Wow. Until we get that money out of the system, we're going to continue to watch Democrats and Republicans kowtow to it because they're afraid of what it can do.
Now, in addition to your podcast, you also have a book coming out soon, I believe, Healing Politics, A Doctor's Journey into the Heart of Our Political Epidemic. What can our listeners expect out of Healing Politics?
Yeah, John, so I'm an epidemiologist, and before I ever ran for office, I spent a lot of time thinking about what the patterns I could find in large reams of data about what was making people sick. When I ran, I ended up being able to meet a lot of people, thousands of people, shake their hands and look at them in the eye as they talked about some of the most challenging parts of their lives. And in that process, I thought I would turn the epidemiologist off, but really that epidemiologist inside my head kept going. And what I realized is that we're suffering an epidemic, and it is fundamentally shaping our political culture. And I think it's an epidemic of insecurity. So I tell a little bit of my story. I introduce the reader to epidemiology as a science. And then from there, we talk about how this epidemic has taken root, what's causing it, and then think a little bit about what we need to be able to solve it. And as a doctor, I know that it's not enough to diagnose a disease. We also have to be able to heal it. And to do that, I think we need to turn on a level of empathy in the way that we think about the progressive movement and the way that it can lift this country, heal that epidemic, and create the kind of place that is just, equitable, and sustainable for everyone.
Okay. Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, host of America Dissected, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if folks are interested in the book, they can go to healingpoliticsbook.com. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you, John and Brooke.
Awesome. Hope to talk to you soon. And we've got more coming up right after this. Pete Buttigieg is not a politician that a lot of people know a ton about. He's a relative newcomer to the national stage, but we're starting to learn more about him thanks to unearthed videos like this one from 2011.
You know, the kids need to see evidence that education is going to work for them, right? So you see a lot of parts of town.
That's part of the motivation.
Yeah, because you're motivated because you believe that at the end of your educational process, there's a reward, there's a stable life, there's a job. And there are a lot of kids, especially the lower income minority neighborhoods, who literally just haven't seen it work. There isn't somebody they know personally
and I think that's
who testifies to the value of education. So yeah.
That makes my chest tight.
Okay, so I'm glad that you're here because I obviously, look, I've endorsed a different candidate. I know that I am not necessarily biased in a positive way towards Buttigieg, but I heard that and I thought, I wouldn't say it like that.
You shouldn't say that at all. And it's this idea that like black people are dumb and that like the system is not the problem. It's the fact that in our homes, there's no, like, are you crazy?
It's very-
like the idea that like, we don't all have like the same, if not even stronger educational like encouragement because of this world that we have to live in. And what's so frustrating for me, like as a black woman in America, that in 2019, the best we can do, excluding the black and Latino candidates, is a stage full of white candidates who almost all have made a similar mistake. In 2019.
Yes.
It's frustrating because like we you know, it's just, I'm all for forgiving people. I'm also like all for searching for people who have never thought so little of us, of people who look like me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is disappointing, particularly because he's not 90. Like that was 2011. He was 16 years old in that video. I'm kidding, he was not. He was in his late 20s or whatever, but he's not an elderly person. Yeah. And I'm sure he thought, I'm so filled with empathy right now. I'm trying to understand these people who live lives that I look realistically don't know much about. They would like education if they had ever seen it help someone, but they haven't because they're surrounded by people that don't have education and don't get that it helps you get a job. That's crazy. And like you said, it's putting all of the onus on culture and the family, and it's their fault. It's not that they exist in a system that makes it harder at literally every step along the way to do well. It's like you don't. If you wanted it, you'd have it already. No, that's crazy, and especially for a guy who's he's always like, oh, you don't know me, but I'm from South Bend, so I get it. Well, kind of. You're from an area near South Bend. You grew up in a nice neighborhood, and it sort of shows.
It's a similar argument. Like one could draw parallels to like what he's fighting today, like this idea that he doesn't have as much political experience as other people running right now, but he feels he still deserves an opportunity. And taking him and his failures at the political experience he has had out of it, everyday people often could be much better politicians than the one we have. They're just out of the club.
Yeah.
They know what's going on and what needs to be done more than anybody.
Yeah.
They're just not in the club.
Yeah.
And so the fact that like he can make that work in his head, but if your skin is darker, it's, I don't know. It's just
we don't have the time to go through the whole thing, but there's sort of like what he just said about education. I don't want to try to read anyone's mind, but I feel like he feels the same way about the politics. Like there's this profile in the Washington Post about how he was always an ambitious kid.
Yeah.
And he was always kind of serious and always thought he'd do politics and everything. And he recently just said it's down to just me and Warren in Iowa. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? But I bet he thinks that's what has allowed me to get as far as I have. I just wanted it. No one else wanted it. No one knew.
He was born to do it?
No, man, like there's a reason why a mayor who got 11,000 votes in one case is taken very seriously as soon as they launch a presidency. And then literally hundreds of other potential candidates who are also mayors who got more or the same number of votes.
And also Rhodes Scholars.
Let's not talk about that. They're not on that stage.
Is that education?
Exactly. Seems like they wanted it actually. Cory Booker, he wanted it. But anyway, there's a learning moment there. Ideally, you do the learning before you run for president, though.
Yeah,
unfortunately, some people don't do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, we're gonna take a break. We come back just a little bit more. So this is our continuing coverage of Donald Trump and his efforts to protect alleged war criminals, including people like Eddie Gallagher. So, look, this has gone through multiple phases already. There was one charge that he was convicted of that was posing with a dead ISIS soldier, but he's also alleged to have murdered a soldier who was being treated and killed civilians with a sniper rifle, including a little girl and an older man. He was not convicted of those charges, to be fair, but despite that, the Navy did try to demote him because of the charge that he was convicted for. Well, Trump overrode that. Didn't care about what the SEALs wanted, what the Navy wanted, he overrode it. Then just recently, they were talking about taking away a pin that he had earned, taking away his official involvement in the Navy SEALs. And Trump said no, but he didn't just say it, he acted too. They have forced the Secretary of the Navy to resign over this situation because this guy who had multiple witnesses alleging he'd committed multiple war crimes needed to be pushed out to prove that there was still law and order in the Navy. Well, that man has now been pushed out, and in his resignation letter, he says this is Navy Secretary Richard Spencer, who says, as Secretary of the Navy, one of the most important responsibilities I have to our people is to maintain good order and discipline throughout the ranks. I regard this as deadly serious business. The lives of our sailors, Marines, and civilian teammates quite literally depend on the professional execution of our many missions. And they also depend on the ongoing faith and support of the people we serve and the allies we serve alongside. Unfortunately, it has become apparent that in this respect, I no longer share the same understanding with the Commander-in-Chief who appointed me in regards to the key principle of good order and discipline. I cannot in good conscience obey an order that I believe violates the sacred oath I took in the presence of my family, my flag, and my faith to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So it doesn't get any higher than this. They've pushed out the head of the Navy because Donald Trump is so dead set on protecting this guy, again, alleged to have committed multiple war crimes, not from going to jail for those, but suffering any consequences whatsoever for what he did.
Isn't it bizarre that like out of the two people here, one of them gets celebrated and gets to retire with honor?
Yeah.
The one who can I still say allegedly killed a teenager?
I mean, he wasn't convicted of it, so I guess it's allegedly. But there are many people. They had, if you haven't watched our videos about this already, the people serving with him had a support group of people communicating about what they had seen him done, so what they'd seen him do.
It's a bunch of really horrible stuff.
Horrible. One sniper said he fired more shots, warning shots, to scare away civilians so that Eddie Gallagher wouldn't shoot them than he ever did shooting at ISIS soldiers himself. And now Richard Spencer pushed out as a result of that. Now, what has Donald Trump said about this? He said this: "I was not pleased with the way that Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher's trial was handled by the Navy." Remember, he only was convicted of that one thing for the picture. So he was treated pretty well in that respect. He was treated very badly, but despite this was completely exonerated on all major charges. I then restored Eddie's rank. Likewise, large cost overruns from past administrations, contrasting. You know what? There's no point in reading all of this. It's nonsense and lies. It's over Eddie Gallagher. It's not about cost overruns and things like that. They pushed him out because the Navy felt like there had to be some sort of signal to the soldiers still serving that no, we do care about crimes being committed, and we're not going to allow the president, who again not only didn't serve but used BS excuse about bone spurs to avoid serving, to override what we believe is necessary for morale and order inside of the Navy.
It's just so weird, like the president taking a side on this. And I know that he's the commander in chief, but it's just bizarre to see like those tweets and the very end of that, like Eddie will retire, and it's just
well, one person's very happy about this. That is Eddie Gallagher, who said, "President Donald Trump, you have my deepest gratitude and thanks. You stepped in numerous times and showed true moral fiber by correcting all of the wrongs that were being done to me. You were a true leader and exactly what the military and this nation needs." Well, I mean, if you're gonna have anyone attest your moral fiber, it's from a person who apparently just ran up and knifed a person to death and then shot dead a little girl. Allegedly, that's what I'm saying. I want that person to be in my corner when it comes to moral matters. And again, this is the military. Like they love to say on the right that they care about supporting troops. So I guess he's supporting one of them, but not the rest, not the top brass and what they think should be done. All those other soldiers are now, like if you're in the Navy, you're thinking, I mean, what sort of people am I gonna be surrounded by? What is going to be allowed to happen? If I see something, should I say something? If I witness a person killing civilians, committing war crimes, should I say anything? I might suffer consequences for bringing up the fact that crimes are being committed.
But honestly though, you also have to for your own protection, because the reason things like this are illegal is because of the danger this poses.
Yeah.
You can't just act anyway.
Yeah, like I said the last time we talked about this last week.
Yeah,
it definitely puts them at risk, and it has to kill morale. And I would imagine, I mean, think about like recruitment. Like, are you gonna wanna join the Navy knowing that like they're forcing out the people who care about morale and order? And who's gonna replace him? Which sort of person is Trump gonna pick now?
Right.
A flunky, someone who's gonna agree with him on whatever he does. Now, Eddie Gallagher, like I said, he's just one of the 3 of these people who've faced faced war crimes allegations. He's reversed sentences for all 3, ignoring Pentagon leaders who had told him such a move could damage the integrity of the military judicial system, the ability of military commanders to ensure good order and discipline, and the confidence of US allies and partners who host US troops. And again, yeah, if you're one of the literally dozens and dozens and dozens of countries that have a US military base, I'd be worried, because apparently anything goes at this point. They're supposed to care about the military. He doesn't care at all. He believes that he knows better than all of them. Like if Obama had done this.
Oh no.
If the head of the Marines had been like, no, for continuing morale and good order, this needs to happen. And Obama was like, get the hell out of here. You're done. Your career is over. They would have lost it. But there's only gonna be positive coverage on Fox News about this.
Absolutely, there's only been positive coverage about Eddie Gallagher from jump.
100%,
so.
Yeah. Sad story. Anyway, we'll see how it continues. We'll see, maybe the next guy will do a good job in taking over the Navy. Sort of doubt it. Anyway, as always, thank you for joining me. We actually have a little bit more, Brooke. We are gonna have a little bit of overtime. So we're gonna take a short break. If you're a member, you can follow along live afterward. We've got one more clip for you. It involves Donald Trump going up against AOC, which he'll quickly regret. One of the more ludicrous defenses Donald Trump is using to say that this impeachment inquiry should be shut down is that it's stopping Democrats from working on other matters. And he went on a tear against national Democrats, including Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recently on Twitter, saying Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, AOC, and the rest of the Democrats are not getting important legislation done. Hence the do-nothing Democrats. USMCA, National Defense Authorization Act, gun safety, prescription drug prices, and infrastructure are dead in the water because of the Dems. So he's attacking them, and I just wanted to give you AOC's response, and then substantively, let's respond to the charge that nothing is getting done because of impeachment. AOC said, in my first 11 months, I've co-sponsored 339 pieces of legislation, authored 15, took on Big Pharma with my colleagues in hearings that brought PrEP generic a year early and exposed abuse of power. In 4 years, you've jailed kids and made corruption the cause celeb. Try to keep up. I didn't know that there had been 339 pieces of legislation at that time. Writing 15 is amazing. There's a lot of people in the House. It's been a year who in their entire career have not done that. And look, she could have filled that tweet with like her 6-part anti-poverty plan. She just had her Green New Deal for public housing plan. Either of those two would be more than a lot of Congress people do in their career in the House. But that's just the beginning. I mean, immediately the protest outside of Pelosi's office, pushing for the Green New Deal, which is now a major part of the entire political conversation in our country. Like that's what she did inside the Democratic Party. And she's not the only one. Obviously, the other Democrats have been doing a lot too. But his charge that we were getting a lot done until this impeachment because now the Democrats are just sort of like, that's all they're focused on.
Right, no, we weren't getting a lot done. Like you were calling people and asking like senators and asking them to block bills. That's not getting things done.
And they were successfully blocking those bills.
Yes, and bills that they personally felt passionate about.
Yeah.
Like no.
Yeah.
It's not getting anything done.
So to that effect, actually, so friend of the show, Alyssa Milano tweeted, the House has passed 366 bills, only 62 have become law. The rest are in the legislative graveyard of Mitch McConnell, who refuses to take action and would rather continue covering up for a president who abuses his power. I like her metaphor of the legislative graveyard. A reminder that Mitch McConnell called himself the Grim Reaper when it comes to those bills.
Because that's something to be proud of. That's disgusting.
Exactly. And by the way, look, I get some people will look at this and say, okay, well, the Senate is Republican, the House is Democratic, so sure, they're gonna pass a lot of really partisan bills that can't get passed. But many of these bills are things that the country is unified in its support for: increased background checks, election security, things like that. Mitch McConnell is killing it either because some sort of not explicitly stated opposition to doing something about this, just because he doesn't want them to have a win or he knows that Donald Trump is gonna veto it. So look, there is a lack of action in Congress, but it's not because of impeachment. It's because of Mitch McConnell almost unilaterally stopping almost anything from happening on important issues, including election security and gun control. So anyway, good response from her there. You keep doing what you're doing. Like she's a great example. There's many others, but she's a great example that, look, she has been pushing for impeachment for several months now. And has that stopped her from writing legislation?
Nope.
Like she just came out with a major plan last week. She's been far busier. What is Devin Nunes doing? What bills is he authoring?
Right, she is why regular people deserve a spot in Congress.
Yeah, because they actually work.
Because they know what's going on. Yeah, they're not so far away from, like back to what we were talking about with Buttigieg, like regular everyday people are smarter about actual politics than your politicians.
Yeah, and or at the very least feel a fire under their ass, basically, to get something done. That this is not like, I'm not entering the House after, well, I did my 8 years in the state House and I was chosen to run for this seat, and someday I'm gonna run for Senate. I don't wanna like scare anyone before I do that. This career-oriented mindset that so many politicians have. No, some of these people never ran for office before, never even thought about running for office, and they don't have future plans necessarily.
They have a people-oriented
They know they wanna do something.
mindset.
Exactly, they have people that they are responsible to. Not donors that they're responsible to, but regular people. And so they get in there, AOC, other members of the squad, actually getting something done. So anyway, and this is not just about them. Others are busy too, but they're great examples. Okay, anyway, thank you for sticking around for the overtime. Really appreciate it. Brooke, as always, great to have you on.
Yeah.
Lots more planned for the rest of the week, so we will see you tomorrow morning. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.